Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet Member for Education and Learning Decisions. I'm Denise Turner-Stewart, Cabinet Member for Education and Learning, and thank you for coming today. Item 1, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest?
For you, Tom.
Okay, have no declarations of interest. Item 2, procedural matters. Members' questions?
There are none.
We have no member questions. 2B, public questions. So our first public question is from Kate Young, who's not attending today. So we have Jason Young to ask a supplementary question.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to present questions and thank you for your responses so far. For my benefit and for any other attendees, would you be kind enough to introduce yourselves?
Thank you. So yes, I'm Denise Turner-Stewart, Cabinet Member for Education and Learning.
My name is Liz Mills. I'm the Director for Education and Lifelong Learning.
Mike Singleton, Service Manager for School Place Planning.
And Gilbert, Assistant Director for SEND and Corporate Parenting Commissioning.
Hello, I'm Hayley Conroy. I'm the Director for Children's Commissioning at Surrey County Council.
Good afternoon all. I'm Pasqualina Puglisi. I'm the Contracts Manager for the Mainstream Schools Capital Delivery Programme in London Property.
Good afternoon, Jane Winterburn, Assistant Director for Education and Lifelong Learning.
Would you like to proceed with your supplementary question, please? Thank you.
In reply to question 1, your reply to the question implies that the children currently at the Priory do not thrive and succeed. It's currently the case that the Ofsted rating is outstanding. So my question to you is, what improvement from outstanding are you expecting the relocation to give in terms of education, and how do you expect this to be of benefit to children who will be arriving exhausted from the commute, some of whom will be only 7 years old and walking in excess of 45 minutes on polluted, congested roads, let alone the same detrimental effect that can be expected to be imposed on younger siblings at the primary feeder school, Holmesdale Infant School?
I would expect the continuation of the outstanding Ofsted rating, regardless of the location of the school. It's an excellent school. But in terms of your questions relating to access and to the travel elements, I think I'll pass to our Director of Education to respond to that. Thank you.
Sustainable, and so it's really important for us to think about maintaining and making. And you will have seen that the evaluation and the information that is about location, it will be part of the planning application as well, I hope. So we're really confident that the design and the build of this school, the safety and security of the school environment will enable all children within that setting to be able to thrive and to be able to succeed. And that's not to say that the school currently isn't doing a really fantastic job for children, but the premises are the issue, and we can't sustain the school in that location, and necessarily, therefore, we have to look for a new location.
We move to question 2. So, Jason, you have a second supplementary question to your question 2?
In terms of the response to question 2, the robust appraisal cannot have adequately factored in the implication or the impact of the relocation will have on children of the Priory or its feeder schools, or there will not be such opposition or strength of feeling. So my question to you is, why do the persons sat on this committee, or the council as a whole, not see the value in preliminary engagement with primary stakeholders, such as parents of children at the Priory and its feeder schools, even if it may not be standard practice or following statutory guidance, given their knowledge of the area, their needs, their expectations, and the obvious significant issues that now arise from the lack of such an engagement? And
again, I think the response sets out the statutory guidance that has been followed in terms of the consultation process. Liz, I don't know if you have anything further to add.
Certainly the engagement is well underway now. We've had 2 phases of planning related consultation engagement by way of example. The first phase was necessarily online due to the pandemic, and the second phase has been face-to-face. As a participant in that myself, was able to speak to parents and indeed residents, and to be able to hear firsthand about their concerns. And of course the nature of the consultation is for us to be able to think about those concerns and really pay attention to them as we're developing the planning application for consideration in the proper way. That in itself will be subject to further consultation arrangements, as you know. So we very much want to engage with the community. The sessions that we arranged last week took that into each of the schools that are most impacted by these proposals, and we will want to continue and work with the school to continue to engage the whole of the community that are going to be impacted by this move.
So we move to question 3 from Nathan Lutz, and we have Olivia Hertzhaus to ask a supplementary question. Who's present today.
My name is Olivia Hursthouse. I'm the grandmother to children who were expecting to go to Priory school and have to speak for Nathan because, like most people who are most concerned about this proposal, he's a working adult with young children, so the timings of these meetings are not exactly optimal. You say you carried out a robust appraisal to compare different options that meet the educational needs for a new school building. But the appraisal doesn't seem robust enough if you fail to consider how the children can actually get to the site. There's been no transport survey or consideration of the route as part of the appraisal. It seems you're only forming those surveys now and only plan to release the results when you make the planning application. You may be aware that thousands of leaflets are now being delivered to households and businesses in Reigate to raise awareness of the proposed move, after Surrey Council failed to alert the community to the proposal. The leaflets provide a link to a survey, and hundreds of people have already responded to it. 94% say they do not agree with the proposed move. 92% have said they're concerned that children in North Reigate will have no access to a junior school. 70% have said they would not now recommend Priory school to friends and family. Your appraisal wasn't robust. Many future parents, local businesses, residents do not agree with the move because of problems with access, pollution and public health. Can you explain now what real measures you're proposing, such as maybe electric shuttle buses or something that's environmentally friendly and convenient for parents, to ensure that children can access the new site in a way that does not increase pollution, congestion, parking problems, and all the other things that make traffic so difficult in Reigate for all of us, and that makes the journey safe and manageable for children, manageable for little children. And if you are unable to provide reassurance, can you please confirm that you will take this proposal off the table until you have developed a proposal that makes more sense for Reigate?
Again, as is set out in the response, a very robust appraisal was carried out. But in terms of your concerns around access, I don't know who would take that to respond.
More sort of supplementary information about this. And indeed, this was the subject largely of question 4 in relation to sort of travel arrangements. We have, through the consultation process, been engaging with the community on a number of aspects of both the safety and the transport arrangements into school. Those will form necessarily an important part of our ongoing work. So that's not to say that we haven't already been considering the work in this area, but the ongoing work to inform the planning application process and submission. And you would understand that we would want to make sure that we'll be able to robustly address those issues within the planning application process. We've given some outline of some of the sorts of measures that we'll be considering in the answer to question 4, and therefore some of this may well be responded to by way of that question, as opposed to question 3, which this is being posed under. I would ask, though, whether Pascalina wants to add anything in relation to those particular aspects around transport and travel.
In response to the point about engagement, the appraisal done, a robust technical appraisal has been done for the purposes of planning and development. That does include pre-community consultation, which was done in 2 stages in February and just recently this month, of which the consultation that's being run by Marengo on behalf of Surrey County Council is still live, and there is a feedback form for that. We're pleased with the attendance. We ran 5 specific events, 2 for public engagement, 3 specific for the schools and the feeder schools. And I just want to distinguish between that feedback form, which is the formal route for feedback, as opposed to the campaign group feedback form, which I believe is the one you've referenced. We took on board all of the feedback that was received at those events last week. We've also left the consultation open the same way we did for the first stage for 2 weeks. That will close on the 27th, and we highly encourage those that have fed back into the campaign group form, if they haven't done so already, to do so through Surrey's form, as that's the correct route to do so. And likewise, we'll take those comments forward to ensure that they're included in the planning submission. But in terms of the technical appraisal, it is robust. And I would just remind all those those putting forward the question that this project is driven by the need to find an alternative site because the current one is not suitable and has been confirmed is not possible for redevelopment. So the proposal we are putting forward in the relocation marks the closest available suitable site within the statutory guidance that we can provide.
Okay, we now move on to question 4. We have Matthew Day, who is in person, to ask a question. Thank you.
So my name's Matthew Day, and I've lived in Reigate for 8 years. I have a son who's 8, and we moved, and he attends Priory, and he also attended Holmesdale. So the reason I and thousands of others, and actually a quick calculation of there's 150 a year per 70 years, about nearly 11,000 children have come through the school, have moved to Reigate to start a family because primarily of the location of Reigate Priory and Holmesdale School and the thriving community that this fosters. I've always adopted an active travel life. I've ridden here today, and along with most parents at Holmesdale and Priory, we don't use a car. There's about 80% we don't use a car. And for my commute, I use a bike, and for shopping, we use a cargo bike. So we're known as an active travel family. My question was about active travel and safety of the route, and I think these are the two fundamentals of our objections. And there's no doubt we understand that we need a new school. I don't think that's up for debate anymore. It's just the location of that school is the real point of contention. We are in, and I don't want to exaggerate, we're in a golden era at the moment where governments and council initiatives are recognising the power of active travel in terms of the health and the well-being. We've got Active Travel England that's only just recently been set up, that where there's a statutory consultee obligation now for large planning applications for new developments to consider not only pedestrians but also cyclists. There's new planning regulations around the 20-minute neighbourhood, which beautifully illustrates a quote which says, "Put schools at the heart of the community, not at the edge, not outside, but at the heart of the community." And then the last initiative in terms of active travel is the Gear Change Initiative, which is again a government plan that is describing the vision to make England a great walking and cycling nation. It sets out actions at all levels in terms of the government and local authorities of what we all need to do. And those benefits, they're reduction of carbon emissions, improved physical and mental health, and the economic benefits. And I was surprised that none of this was mentioned in your response. Around safety, as a junior school, Reigate Priory encourages Year 6 pupils to walk to school by themselves. And that's a valuable developmental skill in preparation for their transition to secondary school. So within your reply, your definition in your answer to the question around a safe route was that your definition of a safe route, you used the road safety assessment of walked routes to school definition. And sad as it sounds, I read that. I thought, right, what does it contain? And it contains a House of Lords statement that says that the pavement needs to be continuous for it to be safe, and that your child must be accompanied by a parent or carer. So I can't see how that fits into the Year 6 obligation of walking your child or getting your child to walk on their own to school. We all know there's a pinch point, and we spoke this at the consultation. There's a pinch point on Cockshot Hill. I think that's what we should all just focus on. You have a proposal around railings, but we all know, and again I've done the study, the Transport Research Group, Railings are to keep pedestrians on the pavement. They're not a barrier, so they're not a crash barrier that is used to retain or direct vehicles on impact. Only last week, and we're running a social media campaign, as I'm sure you expect, and we've been sent pictures, and really, really moving pictures and impactful pictures. Only last week, there were 2 incidents on Cockshot Hill where an ambulance was coming one way and a lorry had to mount the pavement against the wall going down Cockshot Hill. So no raining would have stopped that happening, and there are two separate instances of that happening. Reigate Town, one last paragraph. Reigate Town, the people, the businesses have all benefited from Reigate School being part of the heart of our community. Through this proposal, you're destroying the option of active travel. Even for someone like me, who's very, very keen, I would not take my son on his bike up Cockshot Hill. We recognise we need a new school, and I urge you to reconsider your proposals to move the school and ensure that Reigate remains at the heart of this vibrant town. We voted for you as a council, and I urge you and trust that you will change your proposal, pause the plan, allow us to regroup, and deliver the best outcome for the children. And just the final point is around the question is please can you explain why you are relying solely on outdated policies and not basing the proposal on Active England's extensive toolkit that I mentioned earlier. Thank you.
I'm sure you can appreciate that many similar schools in Surrey have children as they use walking routes to school, and all of this is going to be addressed within the proceedings going forward, and you've had a number of representations to that effect. But in terms of your specific supplementary question, Liz, do you have a response?
In relation to the question itself, and as we've stated, we have a transport department. They are actively engaged in this programme. They will, of course, be thinking about not only the national picture and ambitions, but, of course, our Surrey local transport planning arrangements. And so we would be articulating that as part of the planning application process and submitting that. So beyond what we've already shared, that's probably the fullness of the answer we can give you today.
So question 5 is from Alice, Kelly and Murray, and Claire Allen is attending to ask the supplementary question.
At the recent round of consultations, I was surprised and concerned to learn that Reigate's infant junior school structure for primary education was not considered when identifying a suitable site. Approximately 80% of those attending Priory feed through Holmesdale. Many of those will have siblings attending Holmesdale. This makes double drop-off, pick-up, a daily reality that many parents have to contend with. A local survey shows that currently 81% of those surveyed walk or cycle. This drops to just 12% if this proposal should go ahead. Why? Well, although the council rightly states that the new site is a move of 0.8 miles, seemingly small changes can have a big impact on daily lives. Let's bring this to life. Assuming a central Reigate location, on average, a Priory pupil will walk an additional 1.6 miles a day, a total of 14 miles a week. A Holmesdale pupil will walk an extra 3.2 miles a day, a total of 31 miles a week. And a parent will walk an additional 3.2 miles a day, and a total of 39 miles a week. I hope that the council can acknowledge that expecting 4 to 7-year-olds to walk 31 miles a week, equivalent of a weekly trek to Brighton, is not feasible or healthy, especially given the school timings and safety concerns of the proposed route that also rule out cycling and scooting. Further, that it will push those that can to drive and isolate those that can't. Taking that as read, my follow-up question for the council is, At the planning and development meeting, we were informed that the travel plan, including any support for those exceeding the guidelines set out in the Home to School Travel and Transport Guidance, statutory guidance for local authorities, would be for the school to develop with the support of Surrey County Council Education Team. Your response to my question of what does the council consider to be a reasonable distance for the primary school children to walk to school only quotes the relevant section of this guidance, which sets out that additional support is required for those with a walk exceeding 2 miles. As set out, the distances being covered exceed these maximums. So please can the council explain how it intends to support these families and ensure they retain access to a full state primary education provision, addressing whether Surrey County Council will use common sense when applying the statutory 2-mile guidance, and specifically that this will reflect the education structure and its impact on walking distances I highlight above. What support under these guidelines will look like, given the numbers involved, and who will be responsible for its cost and organisation, and whether, given this context, you can still agree that this can truly serve the children and the community that depend on it.
We have officers present that manage our homeschool transport service. We've just had a full policy refresh, which has been fully consulted upon, and we had a very good response to that, which has all been factored into the refresh policy going forward. How should we manage that response, Liz?
I just wondered, just for my own benefit, could you just summarise the specific questions that you had at the end so that I can make sure that I'm framing them and answering the question as precisely as possible?
No problem.
And then we'll invite, perhaps, based on... Is that okay?
Yeah,
thank you.
So the first one is, are you going to look at the impact of the infant school and junior school structure when calculating the walking distances that then you apply the statutory guidance to? The second one was, when you are then looking at the support required, what is that going to look like, given the numbers, and who bears the cost and organisation of it? And then the final one is whether with this context you still feel this proposed site location can really still give the community that depends on it access to the education that they deserve.
In terms of the first question, the impact and the organisation, the calculation of the walking distances, that is set out very clearly and precisely as a part of our policy, and the policy that has just been redesigned and developed. That's just for signposting, has been through the Cabinet recently for decision making, and indeed there's a part of that decision making on the agenda for today for the post-16 travel as well, for the older children in this particular area. So that will set out precisely how the walking distance will be calculated, and of course that will be from home to the new location of the Reigate Priory School. In terms of the support required and the way that will be organised, and the cost, I'm going to invite Hayley Connor perhaps just to answer that question, and then we'll come back to the site accessibility if we can.
Thank you, Liz. Unfortunately, I've just put in the chat that I was unable to hear the speaker's question when it was repeated, so I would be very grateful either if my colleague Eamon, who's in the room, is able to answer, or if it could be repeated.
Eamon Gilbert's in the room. He can answer the question.
The policy that's just been approved through Cabinet obviously reflects the National Homeschool Transport Policy. It's a mainstream and a special educational needs policy, and it makes clear that there's a walking distance of 2 miles and 3 miles for 2 miles for primary and 3 miles for secondary, and any pupils that were outside those distances would be eligible for home to school travel assistance. And there's an application and an assessment process, but the appropriate transport arrangements would be put in place if they were eligible under that criteria.
In terms of part 3, I might just invite my colleague Mike Singleton to come in. He's the school organisation lead for us as a county council.
And that was about giving support to the measures being introduced. Is that am I
and
correct?
Also whether it's an accessible site.
Okay, yeah. And whether it's accessible. In terms of accessibility, I think we'll always fall back on the walking distances as defined within the legislation. So for under 8, 2 miles; for over 8, 3 miles. In terms of the policy, which Eamon has already referred to, that would in itself would also look to parents who are on low incomes and so forth, and 2 miles would then apply for primary. Is it a reasonable location? It's a reasonable distance from North from North Reigate because it is by definition within walking distance. I know it's not necessarily convenient or necessarily very nice the way the traffic works at the moment, but in terms of its location, I think it is accessible.
We now move to question 6 from Jane D, who's online.
So I'm a parent of a child who's currently at Holmesdale and will be at Priory as of next year. I moved from London specifically to Reigate for the quality of life that Reigate offers and also the excellent schools. We chose the house that we live in specifically because of its distance from Holmesdale and also then to Priory, but also as a working parent, its location to the train station, which offered convenience for all three. My question was primarily focused around sustainability and also around electric cars. I'd like to give some background to that. With the relocation to the existing site in Cockshott Hill, as a working parent, this means that it's a 40-minute walk. And I understand, to your previous point, that this is expected to be a reasonable distance. The distance is not the problem, it's time. So also for parents like myself who work, I have an hour and a half commute into London. So this means that if we're not able to drive because of the active travel initiative and for travel to be sustainable, then this will be a 40-minute walk to school, a 40-minute walk back to the train station, an hour and a half commute into town, working full day, cut short because of the time, an hour and a half back again, 40-minute walk to Cockshott Hill and 40 minutes walk back again, which means that our daily routine will then be 3 hours of commuting, but also 80 minutes of walking at each end. So my question was diverted around sustainability. So if the initiative for sustainability for the school is on active travel and sustainable travel, what about electric cars? Would I be able to drive my electric car, which I have a fully electric car, to the school for drop-offs? The response from that I received is that it's been diverted to the Highways Department at SCC and also to do with the consultation for the Highway Authority. But the last comment, the last note, is that parents will be able to choose how to take their children to school, including whether to use a family car. On top of that, I'd like to add in that it isn't just around my or our working parents' situations, but also around the key concerns that have been raised previously here. One is time. It may be a reasonable walking distance, but it's not a reasonable amount of time for time and poor people, with whether that's a job or whether that is with multiple drop-offs to schools. Safety. If there is an increased congestion of people using their family cars, there will be increased congestion onto the roads, and added to that, it's expected that 80% of SCC workers will be using their car to travel to work, which is an additional load. That then puts an emphasis and a real highlights the problem of safety along Cockshott Hill, because I echo what's been said previously. I won't even walk down Cockshott Hill, let alone along with a child on a bike. So there are 3 points here in terms of the travel. It's not around the distance, it's around the time and the safety.
Again, as is set out in the response, there are a number of assessments that are currently underway that will inform any approach to travel safety going forward. But I don't know, Liz, if you have any further.
I understand the information that's been provided in response to our question. I'm not sure I heard heard the question, although I did hear two issues being brought forward around time and safety. I think just echo what you've said and what we've said previously in this meeting. Of course, the planning, including the safety and the arrangements in relation to the access into the school site, are a part of our ongoing work. They will be submitted in detail along with the planning application, and will be informed by the consultation continuing and underway, as Pascalina pointed out a little bit earlier on. So to that extent, I think we absolutely understand and have heard from a number of parents those issues, and that's why we'll be responding in the planning application to those issues. In response to the issue around time, I think we've articulated the reasons that we've selected this site. It is the closest available, most suitable site based on the evaluation. It's not possible for the school to remain where it is and to be redeveloped on the site. So to that extent, it will necessarily, for some parents, we understand, cause some disruption to their normal routine. But this scheme has been evaluated within the criteria that we are required to look at, and we have done our best work to try and find the most suitable site to move the new Reigate Priory School to.
Thank you, Liz.
Can I just
thank you, Jane. We're only able to take one supplementary question, I'm afraid. So thank you very much.
Just to say that I think that the question hasn't really been answered.
What?
Because it is, you mentioned around the location, and you mentioned around, my question was around sustainable travel, but also around, what is a reasonable expectation for families to distance to travel, for time to travel. I know that you've mentioned that it is the closest location. I have to be frank in that I disagree, and I think that is the key point here, is that as parents of an element of disruption you've mentioned, I think that element of disruption is underestimated, and I think we urge this council to take note of the grave concern that parents have around these topics.
So we now move to 2C petitions, Angela.
There are none.
Thank you. Item 3, so the enhanced annual post-16 policy statement. So I have a statement to present. Eamon, did you have anything you wanted to say on this report? So as the Cabinet Member for Education and Learning, I have delegated responsibility from the Leader and the Cabinet for decisions related to home-to-school travel and transport. On the 26th of April 2022, Cabinet agreed updates to the home-to-school travel assistance policy. Specifically, Cabinet agreed the recommendation that the Council produces an enhanced annual post-16 policy statement and delegated to me the authority to approve the statement. Today, I'm being asked for my approval of the proposed enhanced annual post-16 policy statement, which, subject to my approval, will be published by the 31st of May 2022. I have read the Cabinet Member report of Rachel Wardell, Executive Director of Children, Families and Lifelong Learning. The proposed annual travel assistance policy statement for learners aged 16 to 19 in further education and continuing learners aged 19 to 25, and the equality impact assessment and the mitigations of key concerns and impacts in Annex A. I have also taken into account the feedback submitted during the public consultation during February and March 2022. I will now set out my considerations. As regards the recommendation to improve the enhanced annual post-16 policy statement, I am mindful that the Council has a statutory requirement to prepare and publish an annual transport policy statement specifying the arrangements for the provision of transport or otherwise that the Council considers necessary to make to facilitate the attendance at school or college for students aged 16 to 19 and students aged 19 to 25 with an education, health and care plan. This statement must be published by the 31st of May. I note that the proposed enhanced annual post-16 policy statement that I am being asked to approve will play an important role in supporting young people's participation in education and training. By publishing this statement annually by the 31st of May, the Council will enable young people to take reasonable account of the arrangements available when choosing between different education and training options. I fully agree with the aim of the proposed enhanced annual post-16 policy statement to support independent travel wherever possible and appropriate. I am mindful that it will promote independent travel training as well as other forms of independent and environmentally sustainable travel agreed by Cabinet, such as collection points, cycling and shared transport. I note the proposed statement also introduces a change regarding a post-16 transport bursary. This was agreed by Cabinet on the 26th of April 2022. In line with that decision, where the Council assesses a young person aged 16 to 19 years as eligible for travel assistance under its policy, the assistance offered in the first instance will be in the form of a post-16 transport bursary to support families and young people to make their own transport arrangements unless severity of need or a requirement for specialist transport means this is not appropriate. Parents and young people will have the right to appeal. I am mindful that in the public consultation there were more respondents in favour of this proposal than against. I have considered and taken into account the mitigations identified in the Equality Impact Assessment to enable young people aged 16 to 25 to attend school or college. These include communicating and engaging with affected young people and their families ahead of the new academic year in September 2022, co-producing a new guide on the enhanced annual post-16 policy statement, reviewing the effectiveness of the post-16 bursary offer after it is implemented, continuing to develop the local post-16 offer to ensure it provides sufficient provision, developing independent travel opportunities, and exercising the Council's discretion to establish what travel assistance might be needed based on needs, age and circumstances of young people and their families. I am satisfied that these mitigations and engagement and communication with young people and families will enable them to prepare and plan accordingly in order to attend school or college from September 2022. I note that for those young people assessed as not eligible for funded travel assistance from the Council, the statement also highlights environmentally sustainable travel options available to young people to enable them to travel independently to school or college to access education. I am also mindful that the Council has identified positive impacts of the promotion of independence and that these should be balanced against potential negative impacts. Taking all this into account, I approve the proposed enhanced annual post-16 policy statement and agree that it is published by the 31st of May 2022. I consider that the Council has carefully considered its statutory responsibilities, promoted independence of young people, provided mitigations for potential negative impacts, and listened to feedback and views. I would like to thank all those who contributed to the drafting of the enhanced annual post-16 policy statement and to the production of this report. Thank you. Eamon, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I need to say really that it obviously dovetails into the work that we've done on the main transport policy. We've done an awful lot of work over the past 2 years on our Preparing for Adulthood programme to support young people, especially with special educational needs, into employment and vocational pathways. A lot of what is set out in the main policy is about creating that removing that cliff edge where transport has been provided often in the form of a vehicle, which then leaves the young person unable to make that leap into employment, even if they've got the skills and the ability to be employed. So a lot of what we're trying to do around this is moving the service away from being a service that's focused on delivering transport to upskilling and providing the ability and the resources for children and young people to become more independent and ultimately to travel independently and use that skill in their social life, but also in the world of work where it's appropriate.
Thank you, Eamon, and I commend your comments, particularly at this time when we have a very fluid and dynamic employment opportunity in this country with the amount of shortages we have. You know, we have tremendous skills and apprenticeships, training, and careers support, and we would absolutely embrace the opportunity to support as many young people as possible to have those opportunities to go into the employment market, and certainly to benefit from the independent travel training and the resilience that we can encourage in our young people as they mature. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for all the work that yourself and Hayley have given to the preparation of this, and the consideration and compassion that you've provided with all of this change to our home to school travel assistance. Hayley, did you have anything you wanted to say before we conclude? Thank you.
No, I echo your comments about the hard work of officers and to those that have supported us with the policy, and particularly to our voluntary sector colleagues in Family Voice who are continuing to support us on things such as producing the parent guide. So thank you, Denise. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Hayley, and I would also echo your comments with regard to Family Voice. That's a really integral part of our co-production work with regard to producing our proposals going forward. So I agree. Thank you very much. So thank you, Eamon. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you to everybody that's attended today. I think that concludes the meeting.